And first we see in verse 10 that Jesus used the service approach to engage this woman in spiritual conversation. I want you to understand where she is right now, because she's a very troubled woman. She was coming to the well at noon to fetch water. It was strange the time of day, because in Bible days, drawing water from the well was a woman's job, but the women would go there in mass, almost like a sorority where they're hanging out, talking, catching up with one another, laughing, joking, and then being able to bring the water back to their families. This woman came by herself, which showed us something, that she must have been on the outs with members of her community, particularly with the women. And we'll find later on, this woman, she had been married 5 times. And the man she's with now was not her husband. One thing I can say for her, if I want to look at it from a positive perspective, ladies, she knew how to catch a man. But that's not my, but I don't want to go on that direction. I want us to see the service approach. My lively imagination couldn't overlook that reality. But I want you to see the service approach here in verse 10. And when I use the word service approach, I'm saying this person shares their faith with another by engaging that individual in meeting their felt needs. They have looked at their lives and they see that they have needs that are very apparent, needs that are troubling, needs if unmet will cause that person to not have a good modicum of dignity of humanity and would feel as if their lives are empty with things that they ought to have. And so Jesus said to her in verse 10, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you'd have asked him and he would have given you living water. Now let's separate this out for a moment. What Jesus is saying, hey, I want to give you living water that will cause you never to thirst again. So it was a spiritual reality. And when I give you this living water, it'll satisfy the craving in your soul. You won't have to be looking for satisfaction in other areas. I will give you inner peace and give you a connection with God, and your sins will be forgiven. That's all embodied in that phrase, living water. From the service orientation is this: I am willing to serve you in the area of your need. There's some people in your life right now that you may they live right in your community. You see them, you wave at one another, and then you look at them, they're troubled. And sometimes you may find that they're troubled because they're overwhelmed with life and life's cares. You may find that, here, for example, here's a guy who was a New Ager. And living next door to him was this Christian couple. And their style of conveying Christ was what we're going to go into in a moment, the confrontational style. And I'll just simply say, they kept confronting him. Hey, this New Age stuff is not good for you. You need to get right with God. He couldn't understand what they were talking about. It made absolutely no sense to him. He relocated to live closer to the New Age center where he loved going. And again, next to him was a Christian couple. This couple had such a strong service orientation. They said to him, John, how's everything? And John said, my car broke down. The husband said, hey man, I'm good with cars. Let me come over and take a look at it. He comes over, he fixes John's car. No cost. Took him half an hour. A couple of weeks later, some other kind of service. Hey John, we're going to the store. Need anything? Yeah, man, I just wish I had some milk. He said, I'll pick up a gallon of milk for you. So good. Picks up the milk. And John reimbursed him. And all these little actions of service, it helped to remove John's barriers brick by brick by brick. Why? Because the service approach is one way, one style that may come so natural to you. There's some of you in this room, you love helping people. It's been happening in your life ever since you were a little girl or a little boy. It just flows out of you so naturally. That's your style. You don't need to be somebody else. Some people love talking. That's not you. You love doing. Use your style and engage people in spiritual conversation through that style, and you'll be so impacted. The founder of the Salvation Army, William Booth, said, nobody gets a blessing if their feet are cold, and nobody ever got saved while they had a toothache. What William Booth is saying, meet the person's practical needs, and their hearts open up to their spiritual needs.